Okay, so today's webinar is going to focus mostly on getting started in FCS Express 6. We do have a number of new features, and I'm going to touch upon a few of those new features. I won't be able to go into great depth about a lot of these new features. We'll have webinars that are specific for many of these new features on their own, but I will discuss some of them in some detail as to how we can use them and what they do specifically and what's new to FCS Express 6. Okay, so specifically, some of the new features that we've added for FCS Express 6 is, well, for starters, we now have a native Mac version that you can install on Mac OS. So if you have a Mac with at least the operating system of 10.9 or higher, you can run FCS Express 6 on your Mac now. Also, what we've done is we've added a number of different transformation and clustering and R integration tools to FCS Express 6, so that way you can do a lot of those types of functions within the software without having to leave FCS Express or leave your analysis program and go to another software to do the same type of work. Okay, so therefore minimizing the amount of time that you spend trying to analyze your data, you could do it all under the same umbrella of software. One of the features that we're most excited about, and hopefully I can show you a little bit about that today, is our integrated spreadsheets feature, where what we've done is we've been able to integrate an Excel-like spreadsheet into FCS Express that you can use to analyze your data, and it functions very much like an Excel sheet does, where you can simply type in the cells, you can add data to the cells, you can do functions, you can do a lot of the mathematical calculations that you do in Excel, you can do conditional formatting just like you do in Excel. Okay. With FCS Express 6, we do now offer native compatibility with the Amnis platform. So anyone that's out there that's doing image cytometry and using the Amnis image stream, for example, we now are capable of reading those native data files and bringing them into FCS Express for analysis, and we would just treat them just like we would any other file. Okay, but we do have the feature where we can now also look at the images that are associated with that Amnis data. We've added some new tools to our Heatmap overlays, where we can now put overlays into a Heatmap, where, as you see in this image up here, we can actually see one statistic compared to another. And we've also added the ability to change the radius dynamically for that well based off another statistic. So these heat maps do provide quite a bit of utility so that we can compare multiple statistics together within the same heat map. One of the new features we've also included is something called data-specific gates. So for those of you that have used FCS Express in the past, you know that our gates are universal. So if your gates or the parameters on which you created gates match across different files, you can easily carry those gates from file to file. However, if it turns out you have different files within the same analysis that probably needs a little bit of a different positioning for that particular sample, what we can do is we can actually make data-specific gates, where a same gate now has can be specific for a particular sample within the iteration that you're analyzing. And I'll try to show that in a little bit too. We've added a new feature called the Standard Operating Procedure Builder, where the SOP builder allows you to build instructions and a protocol within your analysis with step-by-step instructions detailing what needs to be done according to a particular step. And we've also enabled it where the user that's performing this SOP cannot move on to the next step until the criteria for a previous step has been met. Hopefully I can show you that as well, just briefly. We've added a number of different tools to help enable visibility and to lock different things, so that way whether or not we make different plots or different objects within FCS Express visible, we can actually do that conditionally, where we could just simply format that particular object to either be visible or not visible, or we can actually base their visibility off of a certain condition. We can now link markers together, and overall we have many usability improvements, such as making the software faster and more responsive. Okay. So before we actually move into an overview of how FCS Express functions, I just want to show you several examples. Okay. So on my screen here, you can see an analysis that's done for a titration example. Okay. So here's a titration for an APC size 7 parameter. And what I've done is I have different samples of different concentrations that are enabled in here. So if I just open up my data list, You can see here that I've enabled this where I have an experiment that has 7 tubes or 7 different concentrations that make up this iteration. And I've loaded them each up into different plots with a particular gating strategy. Okay, so my gating strategy is going to be based off of my lengths, and then I'm looking at positive, negative for those lengths across all the different concentrations that are available. So I've loaded each one of these into different plots. Each one of these plots is using the same gate, the negative and positive gate, but what I've done is I've actually used my data-specific gate feature where even though these are all the same gate, the position of each of these gates is just going to be specific for that particular file. And as I move this around, you can see that my data is updating down here in my spreadsheet. Okay, so here's our integrated spreadsheet. Within this spreadsheet, I can enter information. I could just simply type in a cell and just type in whatever characters I want, just like I would in Excel. And what I can also do is I can take stats from my data and just drop them into this spreadsheet. So whether I have a table like this, I can just take a number and just drop it into a cell, like that. I can undo that if I wanted to. Or if I want to analyze a number of different files at the same time and have statistics calculated for them, I can simply just drag data from my data list, right? So let's say I actually want the positive of the cells in my median gate for each one of these samples, and I want them to go in this column. I could just simply select the files, drag them over, and tell the software to take a statistic from those files. So we're going to take a statistic for our APC size 7 parameter, for our positive gate, for our median, and you'll see that the values automatically are added to my list. Okay. Now what we can also do is we can perform functions just like we would in Excel, where we can simply just click in a cell and just type in a function just like we would in Excel. Now in this case I already have a function here, but if I double click on this, I can see what the function is for that cell. And you can see what I'm doing is I'm just taking these cells here on that same row and using them as variables in that formula. Okay. Now what I can do is I can easily just copy and paste those, either by just using my Control-C command to copy and paste, or I can actually just drag that little square down where the software automatically copies that function to each individual cell as well. Okay, and then as I double click on these, I should see that the variables for each one of these formulas automatically update as well. Now for the spreadsheet, we also are able to conditionally format. So if I just select these cells, I can go up to my ribbon as part of my interface in the software, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And you'll see here that we have the ability to conditionally format these. So we can conditionally format these very similar to how you would conditionally format your cells in Excel, where we could do it by color scales, bars, or we can create our own rules. Again, if we just simply select that formatting, then you can see here how it's automatically applied to your data. And as my data changes, then you'll see that the calculations will automatically change and the formatting for those cells is going to automatically update as well. Okay. So these spreadsheets we can also use to create different types of charts. All right. So in FCS Express, we have the ability to create bar charts, scatter with regression plots, and also pie charts to help display our data. So this spreadsheet is the same spreadsheet that we had over here. And what I did was I just simply copied and pasted between different pages. But from the Insert tab, you'll see here that we'll just simply be able to insert the tool of our choice. Okay, so we can either insert a bar chart, a pie chart, or any of the scatter plots that we have here. And these plots are fed by the spreadsheet that we have available to us. And we can simply just select from the x-axis or the y-axis, and we'll have the ability to select whatever the column headers are here in the spreadsheet. We can have that that information automatically displayed. Okay, so we can either do that for my regression plot, and the data automatically updates. And then my pie chart obviously is going to show me my data within 100% of the total for that pie. And then in FCS Express, what we can also do is we can easily display our data in an overlay format. So whether we do a stacked overlay like this, or if we do a traditional overlay where we look at multiple samples just overlaid one on top of another, you can see that we can do that, and it's very suitable for presentation purposes, or if you want to use that particular image in a publication or something. Okay, so moving on to one of the next new feature is the ability to perform transformations and apply it to our data. So in FCS Express 6, you'll notice at the top of the toolbar, there's a tools ribbon, and from that tools ribbon, there is something that we call transformations. So if we click on this, we'll simply get this transformations window here where we can add a transformation that we want to apply to our data. So our transformations allow us to apply different types of cluster analysis tools to analyze our data, such as PCA, KMeans, TISNI, and we can also do some R integration here as well, where we can add new parameters or perform other clustered transformations through R, where we simply just import that script into our data and apply it to our data. Okay. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you specifically TISNI and KMeans. So here you can see that I've added a TISNI transformation. When I add a transformation, I can simply just select the parameters that I want for that transformation, the cells that I want to be applied to this transformation, the type of TISNI method to use, so whether I want to use the exact TISNI or the Barnes-Hut approximation, and the amount of approximation if I do choose to use Barnes-Hut, and what the overall sample size and what the seed is going to be to get the ball rolling on its transformation. Once I use this transformation, I can just simply insert another plot and then just drag and drop this transformation onto this plot to enable it. And then once I enable that transformation, I can simply just choose the TISNI parameters that are going to be displayed. And I can use the colors that are applied to certain gates to show the different clusters within this particular transformation. And it's a very similar method to how we can implement KMeans as well. So again, we could just simply add a KMeans transformation to our list. Let me just delete this one and just focus on the one that I had previously. And again, we would select the parameters that we want to be part of this transformation. In the instance of KMeans, we can select the number of clusters that we're expecting to see or we'd like to focus on for this transformation, and simply choose the cells from a gate that we want to apply for this transformation. And then again, we can simply just drag and drop this KMeans transformation to a plot, and then we'll have the parameters that are associated with that transformation, and then we can simply select those. Now, what we can also do is once we have these clusters, we can simply just gate on them using our gating tools to help analyze this data downstream. And that's what I've done here. So I've taken a particular cluster, I've just analyzed it, and as I move this around, then I can focus on other gates and other clusters, and you see how that data automatically updates in the adjacent plot. What we've also done is we've enabled the use of heat maps to help display our cluster data for KMeans transformations. So here what we do is we simply just, if I adjusted the number of clusters, each cluster is just displayed as a certain well within that KMeans structure. Okay, but we also get the ability to look at heat maps. We can look at an X parameter plus a statistic for that parameter, and then we can apply coloring to that. And then we can also use a lot of the same, the new enhancements that we've enabled for our heat maps, such as the dynamic wells radius to see how these wells or these clusters relate to one another, which wells have either the highest number of events or a particular stat for which you want to compare for that well radius. The next new feature I'd like to show you, again, for our image cytometry customers, the ability to use a heat map. Here you can see that we can add heat maps, but what we can also do is we can simply just add an overlay to our heat map, simply just by dragging and dropping. And then you can see we now have the ability to compare one statistic versus another, and we can just do that through different colors through the heat map. Okay, so it's rather easy to do whether we drag and drop and add another file, or if we just right-click on Heatmap and just add an overlay. We can add as many as we need to, and then each overlay we add to the heat map just gets another slice within each well. And finally, the last new feature I'd like to focus on before we actually jump into overall use of the software is our SOP feature. So from our ribbon, you'll notice that there is now a quality tab for those of you that have used FCS Express previously. So the quality tab is new, and what we've done is we've added a feature, a section specifically for the standard operating procedure builder. And within that, we can open up our SOP window, and we would simply add rules that we want to be part of a particular analysis. So the SOP can help you standardize a particular analysis. So if you had a certain application that you were doing in your lab that you wanted to standardize amongst various users in your lab, or if you were a core lab where you were training new users repeatedly rather often, what you could do is you can use this SOP feature to create a pretty standardized template that has these specific steps in them for what needs to be performed during each part of the analysis. So each one of these steps can be specifically created to say, step one, load my data. And then what we can do is we can create a function just to analyze whether or not there's actually been data loaded in each plot. If it turns out it is, then the user can move on to the next step. If not, then they have to actually satisfy the criteria for that step before they can move on. So as a training tool, you can create a lot of these steps to help your users realize and recognize what needs to be done as part of a typical workflow for your lab. And when it comes to training, you can just simply give them this template, give them the data, and all the instructions are going to be within that as part of that procedure. Okay. Also with this SOP, what we can do is we can enable permission rules. So what we can do is we can create different rules where we enable or disable certain permissions based off of another condition for that rule. So for example, what I've done here is I'm using our 21 CFR compliance module that has electronic signature capability, where I've created a rule that if it turns out that this document has been signed, everything else is going to be deactivated. I can't change anything about it. I have to actually unsign my document to be able to reanalyze my data, because theoretically if you sign something, that should be it. Well, we can create a rule that allows this document to be locked until it actually is unsigned. And if you do have 21 CFR compliance, you probably also have our audit trail capability. So this is all information that's captured within the audit trail, so that way you can see who signed, who unsigned, and whatever changes were made after the unsigning. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply just close this, and we're going to start with the presentation. Okay. So as I mentioned, we're just going to go over a lot of the basics of using FCS Express. We're going to talk about the interface, how to navigate, how to find different things, and basically a lot of the same basic features of FCS Express: how to insert plots, how to create gates, how to look at stats, how to create a spreadsheet, how to add stats to a spreadsheet, stuff like that. And that's where we really focus on today's webinar. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to my original webinar. I'm just going to simply add a new page. But I also want to take a second just to talk about the interface. So for those of you that aren't familiar with FCS Express, we use a Microsoft Office-like interface. So if anyone has any familiarity with Microsoft PowerPoint, for example, you should probably recognize this interface rather easily. So the idea is that we have this ribbon, and on the ribbon we have all these different tabs, where on each of these tabs are tools that are grouped together according to functionality. So for example, from the Home tab, you're going to find a lot of things that you would probably do from a general standpoint, like copy and paste, or if you wanted to add a new page or delete a page, or also if you wanted to just use a lot of the same tools that are available to you in PowerPoint, such as aligning your plots or aligning different objects that you're going to insert in your analysis. You could do that here from the Home tab as well. Predominantly, we're going to stick to the Insert tab. So just like you would insert objects in PowerPoint, you're just going to insert different objects here to analyze your data in FCS Express. Okay. Down below is where we're going to be able to access all our pages. So adding a page is similar to adding a page in Excel, where you can simply just add a page just by clicking on the tab. Or if you want to just delete it, you can simply just right-click on it and delete it. And if you wanted to navigate between each of the pages, you can simply just click on the Page tab, or you can click on the arrows where you go to the very first, the very last, or any of the pages in between. Also, we can zoom in. We can access our login, so that way if you want to adjust your preferences, you can simply just do that from here. I'm not going to talk about the preferences in general, but virtually every aspect of your analysis can be customized to your needs. Okay. If you want to log out and re-log in as another user, you can also do that from here too. Okay. From the File menu, the File menu shows us a backstage view, so you can access your recent documents or any folder that you just accessed. And also a lot of the same types of features that you would expect from a file menu, like your save as, if you want to open or close something, if you want to export your analysis as a PDF, as a PowerPoint, or as a type of image, whether it's for a particular object or a page, you can also do that from the File tab as well. Okay. What you can also do is you can customize your toolbar, and you can take shortcuts for different tools and just place them in here. This is available for the Windows feature, and it's not necessarily available for the Mac. The Mac interface didn't allow us to do that, so we only enable it for Windows, where we can easily just customize the ribbon, or we can create our own toolbar and add different tools as a quick access tool. All right. So how do we start? Well, basically, we're just going to insert different objects. So for the Insert tab, we're going to simply just select the plot type that we want to insert to analyze our data. In this case, I'm just going to select from our 2D plot section. I'm going to click on Color.plot. And as I click on my document, you're going to be presented by FCS Express to navigate to a file that you want to use to display within that plot. So I'm just going to simply navigate to my data. You'll notice that there's a files to display type here, where I can simply choose the different file type that I'm working with, and then all the files that are available to me will show up in that folder. And I can simply just select a file and click Open File. So FCS Express will show me that file, and it'll show me the first two parameters that were saved with that file. Now this is just like an object in PowerPoint, where if I wanted to move this around, I could just simply pick it up and move it as I need to. If I wanted to resize it, I can just grab one of the vertices and just resize it as I need to. I can also undo that or redo that as I needed to as well. Okay. Now if I wanted to adjust the X or Y parameters are in this plot, I can simply just click on the X or Y axes to give me parameters that help me recognize my data more easily. Okay. Now what we can also do is we can format these plots. So if let's say I wanted to change the information that's in the title. Every object that we create in FCS Express, whether it's a plot, a text box, a stat box, whatever it may be, can be formatted. And we can simply just access that format menu just through a right click. So when I right click on an object, you'll see that the first object that's available to me is the format option. So depending on the object that you're formatting, you're going to have different categories that can be formatted for that object. For a plot, you'll see that there's a title section, and there's a bunch of information that we can choose from that particular titles category. Right now I have it formatted to look at the file name within the title, but if I wanted to change that, I could just simply just either type in here, or I can actually have the software insert some information for me. So I can have FCS Express extract keyword data from my data. Or in this case, what I can do is I can just tell the software, give me the current gate that's applied to my plot. Okay. I can preview that, and I can see the information that's up there now. Or if I just wanted to go back to the original, I could just say restore, and the software will just go back to what it was. Okay. So now that I've inserted a plot, what FCS Express does, it'll take all the data that was in that folder to which I navigated, and it'll load them in the data list. Actually, I'm not sure why this is here. This shouldn't be here. But the data that's in the data list, I can simply just remove it, and I can add new data to it, just simply by clicking on the plus sign, selecting my files, and just clicking Open File. Or if I have Windows Explorer open, I can simply just drag and drop data from that folder and then just drag them into the data list. I just select all these files, I can just take this and just drag them in there. And if these were new files, I can simply just select a file and tell FCS Express, change the data on all these plots to the particular file that I've selected. Okay? And then once they're added here, if I wanted to look at different data files, I can simply just click on the iteration number. And you'll see that this iteration number is actually a link for that data where the software automatically updates the plots with the data that's being selected. Okay? So this data list is what we call a dockable window. So what we can do is we can actually embed this into the side of the layout, so that way it's out of the way. It's not necessarily hovering over our analysis. So as I move this around, you'll see that I have the ability to dock it either on the left, the right, or the bottom. If I just hover that over a square, I can simply just dock that data list wherever I want. And then you'll see that the analysis moves over to accommodate that embedded layout. So if you're dealing with a large monitor, it actually makes it rather easy to keep that out of the way and just put it on the side. These dockable windows also enable us to auto-hide them or pin them. So from the toolbar up here of my data list, you'll see that there's a little thumbtack, where if I just hover over that, I can auto-hide just by clicking on it. And then when my mouse is away, it'll just retract to the side. If I wanted to retrieve data, I can just simply go to my data list and just access it just by hovering my mouse over that data list tab, and you'll see that it automatically appear again. So in FCS Express, we have quite a bit of drag and drop capability integrated throughout the software. So for example, if I wanted to create another plot based off of this data file, I could just simply take this data and just drag it over. Okay. From here, I can select what kind of plot. So let's say I just wanted a histogram. You see that the software automatically creates that histogram for me. I'm just going to move that over here for a second. What I can also do is I can create new plots based off of gates. Okay, so why don't we create a gate first? So from our ribbon, you'll see that there's a gating tab. From that gating tab, if I click on it, you'll see that there are a number of different gating tools that I can use. So for example, if I click on my polygon gate, each click of my mouse around my population of interest is just going to give another vertex on that polygon gate. And when I connect the two ends, FCS Express will prompt me with a create new gate window. So at this point, I can give my gate a name. I can change the coloring. I can determine whether this is going to be an inclusion gate or an exclusion gate. And what I can also do is I can emphasize my data on other plots. This emphasize tool is actually really useful. So what this does, it'll increase the dot size for these gated events. So if this is a small population or you really wanted to track this population throughout multiple plots and see where they fall in relation to other events, you can use this emphasize tool to make these events pop out. So if I just simply select that and click OK, you'll see that it'll increase the dot size. As I move this around, those emphasized events will automatically update, as will the stat that's associated with that gate. You'll see that when I create that gate, I get a text box that shows me the gate name plus a statistic for the percent of gated cells. Now, if I had another plot that's based off of these events, I can actually just easily do that just by taking this event and this gate and just dragging and dropping it to a clear part of my layout. From here, I could simply just adjust the parameters I want to view, and you'll see that my data automatically updates, and you can see that these events are emphasized as well. Okay. So what I can also do is I can replace my gates rather easily. So if I create my gates, and let's say I messed up somewhere, and I could delete my gates, but chances are if I deleted them, I had a pretty established hierarchy that would probably screw up the rest of my hierarchy, whatever stats and whatever assignments I've had established as part of these gates. Well, if I simply wanted to replace this gate, first of all, here, let me maximize this so I can see my population a little bit better. If I just come in, choose a new tool, let's say I wanted to use this as an elliptical gate. If I recreated that gate, you'll see here that in my create new gate window, that rather than create a new gate, I can simply just replace an existing gate. So whether I have 1 gate or 100 gates across multiple pages, I can simply just choose that gate from a drop-down list. I could change the color if I wanted to, or maybe take the emphasis off and click OK. And you see now that this gate automatically goes to this new gate that I've created. Let me restore that. And you can see that any assignments or any stats that I would have had automatically update as well with this new gate. So as I move this around, you see that automatically updates. And this plot was created through a drag and drop. Now, if I also wanted to apply this gate to another plot, I could do that in multiple ways too. So I could select a plot. From my gain tab, you'll see that there's a current gate drop-down menu where I could simply just select that gate from that drop-down menu. Here, let's put a parameter over here. Or I can actually just drag and drop a gate on top of that plot. So again, if I wanted to apply this gate to that plot, I could just take this gate and just drag it on top of it. Okay. So the way we keep track of our gates and their relationship to one another is through something called a gate view. Okay. So from the Insert tab, you'll see that there's the ability to create a gate view. So if I just simply click on that tool, click on my document, the gate view will appear and it'll show me all the gates that are available to this. It will also show me the hierarchy of my gates in the relationship to one another. So for example, since this plot is gated on my lymphs gate, if I created another gate on this plot, it's going to create as a child of my lymphs gate. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and do that where I select a rectangular gate, for example. I'm going to call this my CD4 gate, and I apologize for this coming on my other screen. Okay, you'll see now that I have a new gate that's listed as a child of my lymphs gate. Okay, so within here, what I can do is I can drag and drop to apply this to another plot. I can also drag and drop to rearrange this hierarchy if I wanted to. Okay, so if I created this as a child of a particular gate, but I wanted to rearrange that, I can simply just drag these around, manipulate these, or if I wanted to actually add this as a child, if it turns out I did not add them as a child, I can simply just drag and drop to reestablish that hierarchy. Okay. Within the gate view, we can also edit these gates. So for example, if I just double click on my CD4 positive population, let's say I wanted to emphasize these events, I can just click on that option and click OK, and then you'll see that that will automatically be emphasized. Also from this edit gate window, I can also determine whether or not I want to allow someone to edit this gate or not, or I want to customize that ability for the ability of someone to edit that gate too. Okay. If I wanted to delete a gate, I could just simply right click on it here and just select remove or delete. Or I could just select the gate in the plot and just click on delete on my keyboard and then just select the delete option. So from our gating tab, you'll notice that this is where we'll also be able to create markers or quadrants for our 1D or 2D plots. So if I wanted to insert a quadrant in this plot, I could just simply click on my quads tool, click on my plot, and I'll get a quadrant, and I can easily move that quadrant around just by clicking on the center vertex and just dragging it where I need to be. I'll get stats for the percent of gated cells in each of those individual quadrants. These quads can be formatted as well. So again, if I just right click on this plot and choose the format option, you'll see that there's a category specifically for quads. I can choose the type of quad that I want to use to display my data. So we do offer different types of quadrants that can be enabled for your data. So whether it's a standard quad or a floating quad, where if I chose floating, the floating gives me the ability to adjust each one of these 5 vertices independently of one another. I'll undo that. And we also enable percentile quadrants. So we can do percentile quadrants for the x-axis, the y-axis, or both. And what that does, it allows us to determine the percentage of cells that would be in that lower left quadrant. Okay, so if you had a negative control, an isotype or an FMO or whatever. What we could do is we would expect that quadrant to contain roughly 99% of those cells in the lower left quadrant. What we can do is we can use a percentile quadrant, determine the percentile cells, percentage of cells that we expect to find on the X or Y axis, and then enable that, and the software will automatically calculate the positioning of that quadrant based off of those numbers. Now what we can also do is we can link quadrants together, okay? So many people have typically used the ability to copy and paste quadrants, which you can do here, but you can also just link quadrants. So if I had another plot that had another quadrant in it that I wanted to link to this quadrant, I could just go to that plot to format it, and then I could just select a plot that had a quadrant in it and link the two together. So that way if one quad moved, the other one that was linked to it would also move similarly. Okay. And then if you wanted to insert a marker into a plot, you can simply just choose the marker tool and then just draw it. So again, with the marker tool, you'll have a high bound, a low bound, and the marker will count any of the events that are in between. Now, if I wanted to move this marker around, I could simply just drag it around from the center vertex. If I wanted to resize it, I can either just grab one of the endpoints to move that around, okay? So let's put that here on my negative population. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw one around the positive population and show you that what we can do now is we can link these two together. So if I actually wanted this to be more of like a split marker where these two were joined, and all I had to do is just adjust the middle vertex here, I can actually drag and drop these two onto one another. So now I can actually grab those together so that now that they move around in unison. What I can also do is I can drag stats onto an endpoint, or I could drag one marker on top of another marker from another plot to link them together. So that way if they moved, they'll also move, similar to how we've enabled linking the quadrants together in the other plot. Okay. If I format this histogram, I can actually see all those different tools here from my markers category. Okay. So if it turns out I didn't want anyone to be able to disable that, I can simply just lock that. So that way it'll always be there and no one will be able to break that particular lock, and they'll always be linked together. Okay. Okay, so we have quite a few number of plots here. We have some gates that we're working with. What we can also do with these quads and markers is we can convert them into gates. So by default, we don't convert quads and markers into gates automatically, but we can easily just do that through a right click. So for example, if I just right click on a plot, you'll see that I'll have the ability to convert a quads to a gate, for example, just by selecting the quadrant that I want and then converting and linking it to a new gate. What we can also do is we can link a whole half of a quadrant to a new gate. All right, so if I wanted to take all the cells that are in this upper half of this quadrant, I could just simply choose the upper tool and link that to a new gate. And again, if I just select a new option, I can just click OK. And then you'll see that these will turn green to match that color. And as I move these around, as I move this quadrant around, you'll see that information will automatically update too. Okay. And the same thing with this marker, where if I just right click on this histogram, I can convert a marker to a gate. I can simply just select the marker and link it. I can select the color, click OK. And then you'll see the colors will automatically appear here too. You'll also see the gates here as they're created in the gate view. Okay, so how about some statistics? So you'll see that when we create a new gate or quadrant marker, we do get some stats for these populations. But if I want some more definitive stats, I can just right click on a plot, and you'll see that there's a category for statistics where I can create either gate stats or quad stats or histogram stats. And these all function very much the same way. So I can actually just right click on one of these. I can deselect gates or whatever columns I want to appear within this in this particular stats box. Or I could just right-click on it, format it, and I can pick and choose what stats I want to add or remove, or maybe I just want to change the decimal points, or maybe I just want to change the gates that are actually displayed in that to only show me my limbs, for example. Okay. The same goes with either one of these, so I can just right-click on them and edit them as I need to. Okay. Now what I can do is I can use a spreadsheet to act as a summary for all this data. So if I just simply insert a spreadsheet from my Insert tab, if I just click on the New Spreadsheet tool, I can just give my spreadsheet a name. Maybe I want to call it my summary, for example. I can click OK. Here's my spreadsheet. I can just move it around. I can edit as I need to for any other object. But if I wanted to add data in here, I could just simply right-click and insert a token to take a stat from a particular file, or I could just drag and drop. So let's say I just wanted a file name for my data. I can just drag information from here to there, and then I'll get that information in that cell. Let me expand that a little bit. You'll see that it automatically updates. Okay. Now, if I wanted a cell with multiple stats in here, I could simply just take this particular column and just drag this here as well. And you see that these numbers automatically update too. Okay. Or I could just simply just type in here and then just drag the stat of interest. Okay. If I wanted information from a particular gate, I could also drag that in here. So let's say I wanted information from my limbs gate. I could just drag this to a cell and then just tell the software what stat do I want from that gate. Okay. So you'll see that it's rather easy to use this and fill this information into a spreadsheet. If I wanted to create a formula, I could just simply create a formula just like I would in Excel. So for example, if I wanted to create a ratio of these two numbers, for whatever reason, I can just simply click on the cell, enter an equal sign, and then just select the two cells that are going to be included as part of this. Okay? And if I had multiple samples that were being summarized here, I can simply just drag this down, and then the software would copy and paste that formula to the other entries within that spreadsheet, and the variables would automatically update, as you saw in the titration example. Now, if I wanted to format the contents of this cell, I would format this very similar to how I would format this in Excel. So I can just right-click on this and format my cells. Let's say I wanted to change the decimal point number. I can just select 2, and then you'll see it automatically updates. And then if I had a series of numbers here and I wanted to apply some type of conditional formatting to that, I could select that, go to my Layout tab for my spreadsheet, and then just apply conditional formatting as I need to. You'll also notice that here within our Spreadsheets tab, we have a number of different functions that are available here. So not only can we additionally format if we wanted to insert a row or delete a row or a column, we could do that from here. If we wanted to format, we could do that from here as well. If we wanted to clear the contents, we could do that from here. If we wanted to freeze some panes, whether it's a column or a row, so that way it's always there as you move throughout the data that's in that spreadsheet, we can keep that there. We can add comments, but what we can also do is we can take this whole spreadsheet and just export it to Excel. So if you wanted to take this spreadsheet and export it to work even further in Excel, you can just simply select it and just click on the export option from the Spreadsheet Layout tab. And then you can export it in whatever form you want so you can work with this further in Excel. Also, for the spreadsheet, From the Spreadsheet Form List tab, you'll see that you have the ability to work with virtually any function that's available to you in Excel. So, for example, if I had a number of different stats that were calculated, I could come here and tell the software to give me an auto sum, or if I want just an overall count, or any of these types of features that you would also find in Excel. You can also use a number of different functions that are available to you that you would find in Excel, a number of different financial, logical, text, date and time functions, and use those as you need to analyze your data. Okay? Okay. So, we're quickly coming upon an hour of this webinar, so we're going to get moving. We're now going to talk about batch processing. So FCS Express has a full-fledged, a fully featured batch processing component to it. So I have all these plots, I have these stats, I even have a spreadsheet. If I inserted a bar chart coming from the spreadsheet, I could have everything I needed here essentially. But chances are I'm probably going to need my data to live somewhere else outside of this layout in some way, shape, or form. And I'd like to standardize that for each of the data files that I'm analyzing, right? So with batch processing, what we can do is we can create a pipeline of different actions that we want FCS Express to perform for each one of our data files. So in this case, as you remember earlier, I have 9 different files that I'm analyzing here, okay? So maybe I'd like to take each one of these files, I want the software to analyze them and export them to PowerPoint for me. Or maybe I want them to print, FCS Express to print these, or save an archived copy of my data in this template without actually overwriting my original template. Or maybe I just want to export my data as a high-res image. I can do that all here for in my batch processing, simply just by creating a list of actions that FCS Express performs for my data. And the way this works is if we just open up the batch actions window, we can add the different actions that we want to our list just by clicking on the action and then formatting the properties for that action. So we can format the printer that we want to use, for example, what pages are going to be printed or how many copies are going to be printed, and then just click OK, and that action will be added to the list. Now, you'll notice here that there's a checkbox. So let's say I didn't really want to print, I didn't want to waste paper that day, I can simply just deselect that checkbox and FCS Express would skip over that action when it comes to batch processing. Okay. Now I can add other functions here for automatically as well. So let's say I wanted to export my data to PowerPoint. I can just click on Save to PowerPoint. I could tell the software to open this after saving. I could designate what pages are going to be made part of my PowerPoint presentation, so I can tell the software to export all my pages, the current page, or I can specify which pages. In this case here, I have 4 pages, so I probably don't want these first 3 to be part of my PowerPoint presentation, so I can just say, just use the current page as part of my PowerPoint presentation. And what FCS Express will do, will just take all the objects that are on this page and make a new slide in a PowerPoint presentation for the data that's presented there. Okay. I can tell the software to either combine these all into a single PowerPoint presentation or to export each sample as its own new PowerPoint file. If I want to append to a pre-existing PowerPoint file, I could do that here, just simply by choosing the append to an existing option and then navigating to the file that I want to use to which I want to append my data. And if I was appending my data, then I can tell the software, do I want to save the appended file or do I want to save this as a brand new file altogether? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the samples that I'm exporting, I want to combine them all into a single PowerPoint presentation, and I'm just going to save it to a brand new file. So I'm just going to click on the folder and navigate to a location where I want to save my data and give my PowerPoint presentation a name and click Save. Okay. Now I can just click OK, and you'll see again it's added to the list. If I wanted to save my data as a PDF, I can just click on Save to PDF. Again, I can tell the software just to save the current page, whether I want to combine everything into a single PDF or save each sample as its own PDF. I'm actually going to save each one individually. And again, I'm going to tell the software where to save the file. I'm going to go back to that same folder that I had earlier. I'm going to give my PDF a name, click OK. Now, ideally, I'd like the FCS Express to name these files uniquely for me so that way I have 9 separate PDFs for each one of the samples that I'm analyzing, and each one's going to be named off of some identification that I'm using specifically for each file. Well, what I can simply do is I can have the software insert a keyword that's saved with my data. So those of you that aren't familiar, keywords are metadata that are saved within the file header for the data, usually coming from the instrument that you're used to acquire your data. Different manufacturers have different keywords that are available, but there are some standardized keywords they can use. So you could just look to see what keywords are available to you, and then you can use that as you're doing your analysis. Okay. But with this data, I'm just simply going to put my cursor in here. I'm going to type in, click on the T here at the end of the line. I'm going to just tell the software to take a keyword. I'm going to click on my keyword category, and then what I can do is I can navigate through all the keywords that are written to the file header, and I can see what those keywords are and what their values are. So I can use any keyword value that's here. I have one specifically in mind that I want to use in this case. I can simply just select it, and I'll take that keyword here. But if you also happen to know what the keyword is on the top of your head, you can just type it into the field, click OK, and then click OK again. All right. So in this case, when we're about to run batch processing, FCS Express will create 9 different PDFs for me. Each one will be uniquely named for each one of those files. I can save my data as an image. So we have the ability to save our data either a TIFF, a JPEG, a bitmap, a metafile, GIF, PNG, and I can also determine the type of resolution I use. So I can either create a low-res image or a high-res image, or I could just use whatever I see on my screen. So basically what I see is what I get, and that's what the image is going to be when it's exported. But if I need an image, a high-res image specifically for publication, what I could do is I can tell the software to use a specific image, and then I could designate what the DPI is going to be for that image. Okay, and then up here, the output file, I could just simply designate where I'm going to save this data. Again, I'm going to just give it a name. And again, using the same methodology that I used before, I can have the software automatically name these images for me just by using that same keyword I used. Okay. And then finally, what I can do is I can also export my data. So let's say I had certain stats that were being collected from each file. I probably would want to keep these within a spreadsheet somewhere and just keep adding them up just in case I want to keep track of a particular stat over the course of a study or some type of research experimentation that I'm doing. You'll see here that we have underneath the Add Report section, we can add an Excel report, 2 different types of Excel reports. So what we can do is we can add something that's called Export to Excel Column Mode. So Excel Column Mode is typically what we would expect from a basic Excel export, where basically you have a row for each sample that you're analyzing, and then you get a separate column for each stat that's being exported per sample. Export Cell Mode allows me to work with a specific spreadsheet template where I get to designate what stat is going into which cell. Or maybe I wanted to put a picture of a plot within a certain cell. So let's say I wanted a picture of this plot to go in cell A1, or if I wanted this stat to go in cell D10. I can use this cell mode export, designate the spreadsheet template that I want to use, and then just provide those as assignments for those particular objects to go in that spreadsheet template. For this example, I'm just going to use our column mode export. And again, I'll designate where I'm going to save this. Click OK. And then what we could do is we could just add the stats that we want to be exported as part of this. So again, I can just drag a gate. So if I wanted the stat for the number of percentage of cells in here, I could just simply drag this gate over and then tell the software, take the percentage of gated cells from that gate. Or maybe I wanted that keyword that I used before as identification. I could just simply take this plot, drag it over, choose a keyword token, then type in that same keyword. And as I add things around, they get written to the Excel sheet, basically in the same order that they're listed here. So if I wanted this keyword to go first, I would simply just move it up in the list. I can drag stats from these tables, so simply by either selecting an individual cell, or I can just select this whole column. and just drag it over. Or if I had a cell within this spreadsheet that I want to be expressed in this export, I can simply just select the cell, come in, and then just move this over here as well. Okay. So in this case, if we wanted to run this, we could just simply click on the Run button here located in the Batch tab. This is a pretty high-level overview of batch processing. We did recently, earlier this week, have a batch processing webinar. So if you wanted to see more specifics and details of batch processing, please view that. It will be available on our YouTube site and also on our homepage, on our website, fairly soon, if not already. For those of you that did attend that webinar, you'll receive links and notifications as to when it's ready for viewing. Okay, but in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop open my data list. So again, the idea is that batch processing is going to go through each one of these 9 samples or iterations and provide each one of those export options that I've designated as part of the batch actions. So when I click Run, you'll see it's going to go through each one of those. It's going to produce the output that I've specified. And I'm just going to sit back and wait until it's done. And this will be done in about a minute. Okay. You can see here in my data list, it's automatically highlighting the file that's being analyzed or being displayed in my plots in the background. And all the stats are updating automatically for me. Okay. Now on my other screen, you can see the export options that just appeared. So here's my Excel export. So here are each of the 9 samples that I analyzed. There's this keyword value that I've asked the software to export for me, plus all the values for all those different stats that I specified. Here's my PowerPoint presentation. So each sample got its own slide. I can see the data as it was analyzed at that time. So each object that was a part of my layout gets automatically exported as an image, so I can move this around. I can resize this if I wanted to. I could do whatever I want. These are all image graphics that I can enable or delete or do whatever I need to do as well. If I actually just viewed this under magnification, you can see how high res that information is. If I go back to that folder where I saved all my data, you can see now that these are all the different exports that were just completed for me. So I have a PDF for each one, plus an image. And plus this is also where I can find my PowerPoint and my statistics that are available to me. Okay. Here in the case of the TIFFs, you can see that these are almost 33 megabytes in size. So definitely very large, high res, as you can see. Okay. So now what do I do with this template? So what I can do is I can save this as a template, as an empty template, so that way I can load my data the next time I need to perform this experiment. Right? So the way I can do that is just simply go to my File tab. I can save as. And just give it a name. And just tell the software to just save this with no data linked to it. So with unlinked data, click Save. And this template will now be available to me from the File menu. If this was a template that I used often, I can simply just tack it to the list, so that way it automatically appears at the top of my documents list and it's fixed. But now if I close this, I can simply just open it back up just by double-clicking on the icon. And I'll get the same copy of the template that I used before, plus all the different pages I had here before as part of the presentation. But if I go to the page that actually had all my plots, you'll see that they're empty, and all I need to do is simply just add data to my data list. So I'll add the same files as before, and then just tell the software to load them in my plots. And you'll see that all the information automatically updates. Okay. So this template contains whatever information, whatever plots and gates we had, also whatever batch actions we had. So you can see that creating a template could help you standardize and make this assay very reproducible for you in the future, so that way you don't necessarily have to keep recreating the wheel. Right? So whether it's a spreadsheet, whether it's transformations, whether it's any of the new features that we've enabled in FCS Express, they're all available and saved here as part of this template. Okay. All right, so we're just over an hour here, so this is probably a good time to wrap up everything we've seen so far. So FCS Express 6, as you can see, is modeled heavily off of Microsoft Office. We've incorporated an interface that should be very familiar for anyone that's used Microsoft Office, where if you have familiarity with PowerPoint, it should be a pretty easy and smooth transition into FCS Express 6, where you can use a lot of the same techniques and mechanisms that you would use to create a PowerPoint presentation in FCS Express 6. Hopefully you can see that FCS Express 6 is a very sophisticated data analysis and reporting software all within the same package. So whether you're doing TISNI or some type of multi-dimensional transformation for your data, or whether you need to do some type of spreadsheet calculations for your data, you could do them all within the same software, so that way everything that you do could be within one software. You don't necessarily need to migrate to another piece of software and learn how to use that other piece of software and just waste time in the process. FCS Express 6 is now compatible with both Windows and Mac OS platforms. So regardless of the platform that you use, you can now install the installer for each one of those platforms, and FCS Express functions in the same manner. And as you can see, FCS Express 6 offers a quick and responsive real-time analysis for your data. So as you move your gates around, or your quads, or whatever it is that you're using for your analysis tools, you can see that everything updates in real time and provides a responsive and a current view for your data analysis. Okay. So with that, I'm just going to take a couple minutes to take any questions that anyone may have. Again, I thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. We are very appreciative of you being able to take some time out of your day to join us. For those of you that are joining us or have not already, please feel free to go to our website at fcsexpress.com or denovosoftware.com to download a free 30-day trial. The 30-day trial is a fully featured version of our software that you can use your own data with. And if you have any questions, you can always contact us at support@denovosoftware.com. So again, I'm going to stay online for a couple more minutes to take whatever questions you may have at this time. Yeah, so we did have a specific webinar regarding transformations earlier this fall. So there is a webinar currently on our website where you can view that webinar and you can go over detail. So it's actually, I was the one that hosted it, and we also had our developer who helped implement a lot of those transformations into the software were the panelists within that webinar. So please feel free to go to our website, denovosoftware.com, and you can find that webinar from our recorded webinars page. Okay. Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up there. So again, thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at support@denovosoftware.com. We hope to hear from you, and we hope that you enjoy using our software. And if you haven't already, please give it a try. Chris, I will contact you offline and try to answer whatever question you may have separately and privately, okay? So again, anyone that's joining today, you will be notified when our video is available for watching on YouTube and also on our website, okay? So at this point, thank you for coming, and I hope to hear from you soon. Have a good day.